CEO leaves wife for secretary. 25 years later, discovers his ex-wife is his new boss's mother. Evan Hargrave stood confidently at the front of the lavish ballroom, the soft golden lights of the chandeliers reflecting off the polished marble floors. The air was thick with the scent of expensive cologne and the sound of laughter and clinking glasses. He was surrounded by colleagues and admirers, all eager to hear his latest insights on the corporate world. As the CEO of a leading tech firm, Evan had built a reputation that was both formidable and enviable. He was the man everyone wanted to be, and he reveled in the attention. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Evan began, his voice smooth and authoritative. "This company has achieved remarkable success over the past year, and I couldn't be prouder of each and every one of you. Together, we have set new standards in innovation and excellence." As he spoke, Evan noticed a familiar figure entering the room, his son Alex. The young man was dressed sharply in a tailored suit, but there was an air of detachment about him that caused Evan's heart to flutter with unease. He had always hoped that his son would admire him, that he would be inspired by his achievements. But tonight, Alex's expression was inscrutable, a mask that concealed any thoughts or feelings he might have. Evan finished his speech to a round of applause, but his gaze remained fixed on Alex. The young man offered a polite smile, but quickly turned away to mingle with his peers. Evan's chest tightened. He had tried to keep a close relationship with Alex after the divorce from Claire, but it had become increasingly clear that their bond was fraying. "Great speech, Evan," a voice called, breaking his reverie. It was Lila, his current partner and secretary. She sidled up to him, her smile radiant. But Evan couldn't shake the feeling of discomfort that had settled in his gut. "Thanks, Lila," he replied, forcing a smile. "I hope it resonated with everyone." "Oh, it certainly did," she said, her eyes sparkling with ambition. "But you know, the real achievement is how you keep pushing the boundaries. You're a legend in this industry." Evan puffed out his chest, enjoying the compliment. But just as quickly as the pride swelled, a shadow of doubt crept in. He realized he had become accustomed to the accolades, but they felt increasingly hollow. He glanced back at Alex, who was now deep in conversation with a group of colleagues, laughter escaping him. But Evan couldn't help but feel excluded from that joy. The scene shifted as Evan's thoughts drifted back in time. A flashback unfolded in his mind. Claire, standing in their cozy living room, her hair falling loosely around her shoulders, laughter in her eyes. They had shared dreams back then, hopes for the future and ambitions that seemed limitless. But those dreams had been overshadowed by the relentless pursuit of success that had ultimately led him to leave her for Lila. He remembered the day he had made that choice vividly. It had been a warm summer afternoon, the sunlight streaming through the windows as Claire prepared lunch. She had been radiant, her laughter echoed through the house as she played with Alex, who was just a toddler at the time. "Evan, can you help me with this?" Claire called from the kitchen, her voice bright and inviting. He had walked in, wiping his hands on a dish towel, and watched her for a moment, captivated by her grace and warmth. "What do you need, Claire?" he had asked, feeling momentarily content. But that contentment began to feel like a burden as the pressure of his career mounted. He wanted to be the best, to climb the corporate ladder, and Claire's dreams had begun to feel like an anchor, holding him back. "I think I'm going to apply for that promotion," Claire had said one evening, a hint of excitement in her voice. Evan had forced a smile, but inside he felt a wave of panic. "Are you sure? You know how demanding that role can be." "I know, but I love teaching, Evan. I want to inspire my students," she said, her eyes shimmering with passion. "And I want to succeed in my own way," he had replied, feeling the growing rift between them. The memory faded, and he returned to the present, feeling a twinge of regret. He had sacrificed so much for the sake of ambition, leaving behind Claire and the life they had built together. In its place, he had constructed a new life with Lila, one filled with admiration but devoid of the deep connection he once had. As the evening progressed, Evan found himself reflecting on the choices he had made. Claire had always been the heart of their family, nurturing and encouraging, while he had chased after fleeting accolades. He had convinced himself that he had made the right decision, that leaving her had been necessary for his career. But standing in the midst of his success, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had traded love for ambition. Meanwhile, Claire had been busy building a new life of her own. She had faced challenges head-on after the divorce, her passion for education guiding her through the difficulties. In a flashback, the scene shifted to a bright classroom filled with eager students. Claire stood at the front, animatedly discussing a lesson plan with excitement radiating from her. "Okay, class. Today we're going to talk about the power of choices," she announced, her voice ringing with enthusiasm. "Each decision we make shapes our future. Can anyone tell me about a choice that changed their life?" Hands shot up in the air, and Claire smiled, calling on a bright-eyed girl in the front row. "I chose to join the school play, and it helped me make new friends," the girl exclaimed. "Exactly," Claire replied, her heart swelling with pride. "Choices can lead us to new opportunities, but they can also have consequences. It's important to think about what we truly want." As she engaged with her students, Claire felt fulfilled. Teaching was her calling, and she poured her heart into every lesson, determined to inspire the next generation. Yet, even in her joy, the ghost of Evan lingered in the back of her mind. She still felt the echoes of their shared dreams, the love they once had, but she had learned to bury those feelings deep within. In another flashback, Claire sat on the edge of her bed, a photo of Evan and young Alex in her hands. It was a snapshot of a happier time, and she found herself tracing the outline of Evan's face with her fingertip. Tears brimmed in her eyes as memories flooded back. The laughter, the love, and the plans they had made together felt so distant now. "Why did you have to leave?" she whispered to the empty room, her voice breaking under the weight of her emotions. The moment was fleeting, and she quickly wiped away her tears, reminding herself of her purpose. "I have to be strong for Alex," she thought, pushing aside the pain. She had dedicated herself to raising their son, providing him with the love and support she felt he needed, even if it meant carrying the burden of heartbreak alone. Back in the ballroom, Evan's thoughts swirled as he continued to watch Alex. He recalled the last time they had shared a genuine conversation, the way Alex had looked at him with a mix of admiration and disappointment. Evan yearned to bridge the growing chasm between them, but he didn't know how. "Hey, are you all right?" Lila nudged him, concern etched across her face. "You seem lost in thought." Evan forced a smile, shaking himself from his reverie. "Just thinking about the future, I suppose." "Your future or ours?" she asked, her tone playful but edged with seriousness. "You know, we have a lot to accomplish together." He nodded absently, but inside, he felt a tightening in his chest. The future he had envisioned with Lila seemed increasingly distant from the life he had once had with Claire. The ambition that had once fueled him now felt like a heavy chain binding him to choices he regretted. As the night wore on and the crowd began to thin, Evan felt an overwhelming urge to find Claire and confront the past that haunted him. He had made a life for himself, but in doing so, he had lost sight of what truly mattered. The image of Alex laughing with his friends faded into the background, replaced by a longing to reconnect with the family he had sacrificed. With a determined breath, Evan resolved to find a way to mend the fractured relationships in his life, starting with Claire. The shadows of the past loomed large, but he was ready to face them, to confront the choices he had made, and to seek redemption for the love he had once taken for granted. Evan Hargrave stood at the edge of the sleek, glass conference room, the Manhattan skyline glittering behind him like the accolades he had amassed over the years. He was a man accustomed to success, the CEO of a multi-million-dollar firm, and he wore his accomplishments like a tailored suit, perfectly fitted to his ambitious persona. Yet today, as he surveyed the room filled with employees and investors, a flicker of unease disturbed his otherwise polished demeanor. "Congratulations, Evan. Another record-breaking quarter," a colleague exclaimed, clapping him on the back. The praise flowed like a fine wine, intoxicating and heady. Evan responded with a practiced smile, but his gaze drifted to his son, Alex, who stood at the far end of the room, his arms crossed, an inscrutable expression on his face. "Hey, Alex, come over here," Evan called out, trying to inject warmth into his voice. Alex hesitated, his eyes narrowing slightly as he approached, the distance between them feeling like a chasm. "Dad," Alex said, his voice cool. "Congratulations on everything." The strained syllables hung in the air, heavy with unspoken feelings. Evan felt a pang of disappointment but brushed it off, attributing it to the generational gap that had seemingly widened over the years. "Let's celebrate together. You worked hard this quarter too. You'll be running your own department before long," Evan said, attempting to bridge the gap. "I guess," Alex replied, his tone lacking enthusiasm. "But it's not really my thing to celebrate your success." Evan felt a flicker of annoyance. "It's not just my success, Alex. It's ours. You're part of this company too. I want you to feel proud." "Proud? It's hard to feel proud when it feels like everything is about you," Alex shot back, his voice rising slightly. Evan clenched his jaw, feeling the familiar frustration bubbling beneath the surface. Before he could respond, Lila, his current partner and secretary, appeared at his side. Her presence was like a beacon of brightness, a stark contrast to the thickening tension between father and son. "Evan, darling, you should see the numbers. They're incredible." "Right numbers," Alex muttered, his sarcasm palpable. "Good for you, Dad. Good for you, Lila." With that, Alex turned on his heel and strode away, leaving Evan standing there, his heart heavy with a mix of pride and disappointment. "Don't mind him. He's just going through a phase," Lila said, her voice laced with concern. She looked at Evan with those bright eyes that once made his heart race. But now they felt more like a spotlight, illuminating the cracks in their relationship. "Maybe I'm the one going through a phase," Evan replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Lila frowned slightly, but before she could respond, the crowd around them began to cheer, drawing Evan's attention back to the event. As the evening wore on, the celebratory atmosphere began to wear thin for Evan. He found himself slipping away from the gathering, retreating to his office, where the familiar scent of leather and polish would envelop him like a comforting blanket. He sank into his chair, his mind racing with thoughts of Alex and the distance that had grown between them. In the quiet of his office, Evan couldn't shake the feeling that he had lost something precious. It wasn't just a connection with his son. It was a sense of purpose that had begun to elude him. He leaned back in his chair, staring out at the glittering skyline, and recalled the days when Claire had been the center of his universe, when their laughter filled their home and their dreams were intertwined. Meanwhile, Lila was in the break room, pouring herself a cup of coffee. She felt a heavy weight in her chest, sensing that something was off with Evan. Their relationship had always thrived on ambition and passion, but lately, it felt like they were drifting apart. "Hey, Lila," a colleague said, entering the break room. "You're looking a bit tense. Everything all right with Evan?" Lila forced a smile. "Yeah, just the usual stresses of the job. You know how it is." "Right, but he seems different lately. You think it's the pressure?" "Maybe," she replied, her mind wandering back to that night. The way Evan had looked at Alex, the disappointment etched on his face. "I don't know. I just wish he'd let me in, you know? He's always so focused on work." "Maybe you should talk to him. Communication is key, after all," the colleague suggested, sipping their coffee. Lila nodded, but deep down, she felt a sense of dread. What would she say? How could she reach him when he seemed so lost in his own world? That evening, Evan returned home, the weight of the day hanging heavy on his shoulders. He found Lila in the kitchen, preparing dinner, her movements precise and quick. "Hey, how was the event?" she asked, glancing up at him with a bright smile that faltered slightly upon seeing his expression. "Fine," he replied curtly, moving past her. He plopped down on the couch, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "Evan, what's wrong?" Lila asked, concern creeping into her voice. He sighed heavily, feeling the walls closing in. It's Alex. He doesn't understand me, and I don't know how to reach him. Have you tried just talking to him? Lila prompted, her tone gentle yet firm. I've tried. Every time I reach out, he pushes me away. Evan snapped, the tension boiling over. Maybe I'm not cut out for this father thing anymore. Don't say that. You're a good father, Lila insisted, moving to sit beside him. You just need to find common ground. He's at a stage where he's trying to figure himself out. It's not easy for him. Evan turned to her, frustration evident in his eyes. You don't understand. I left Claire for ambition for this life. I thought it would make me happier, but now I'm starting to wonder if I made a mistake. Lila's expression softened, and she reached out to touch his arm. Evan, you can't change the past. You made choices, and you've built a life here. But you can still fix things with Alex. He needs to know you care. I do care, Evan exclaimed, his voice rising. But it feels like I'm fighting a losing battle. Every time I try to connect, it's like I'm talking to a wall. Then maybe try a different approach, Lila suggested. Instead of pushing, just listen. Let him talk. Show him he matters to you. Evan considered her words, feeling a flicker of hope. Maybe she was right. Maybe he needed to change his approach. But even as he thought this, doubt crept in. Would Alex even want to talk to him after everything that had happened? The next morning, Evan sat at his desk, staring at the documents before him but unable to focus. His mind drifted back to the previous night's conversations, both with Lila and Alex. He picked up his phone, contemplating reaching out to Alex, but hesitated. Dad! Alex's voice broke through his reverie, and Evan looked up to see his son standing in the doorway, a slight frown on his face. Hey, Alex, Evan said, straightening in his chair. I was just thinking about you. Yeah? What about? Alex asked, leaning against the doorframe, his arms crossed defensively. About how we haven't really spent time together lately. I thought maybe we could grab lunch today. Evan suggested, trying to keep his tone light. Alex hesitated, his expression unreadable. I guess I could do that, he finally said, though his tone didn't convey much enthusiasm. Great. Let's meet at that new cafe down the street, Evan replied, feeling a flicker of hope. Sure, Alex muttered, before turning to leave. As the day progressed, Evan found it hard to concentrate on work. The anticipation of lunch with Alex filled him with anxious energy. He replayed different scenarios in his mind, debating how to approach the conversation. Would Alex be open to talking, or would he shut down as he had before? When lunchtime finally arrived, Evan walked to the cafe, his heart racing. He spotted Alex sitting at a table, scrolling through his phone, his expression distant. Taking a deep breath, Evan approached him. Hey, sorry I'm late, Evan said, sliding into the seat across from his son. Alex looked up, his eyes narrowing slightly. You're not late. I just got here. Right, sorry. I was just caught up with everything. Evan stumbled over his words, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Everything? Like work? Alex asked, his tone tinged with sarcasm. Yes, like work, but also us, Evan replied, leaning forward, sensing the opportunity to connect slipping through his fingers. I know we haven't had the best relationship lately, and I want to change that. I really do. Why now? Alex shot back, his voice sharp. Why do you care all of a sudden? You've always been too busy for me. Evan felt the sting of his son's words. I know I've made mistakes. Evan stood in the bustling conference room, the sound of applause fading into a background hum as he absorbed the news of his son Alex's promotion. Colleagues and associates swarmed around him, congratulating him on raising a son who had quickly risen through the ranks. Yet, as he clutched a glass of champagne in his hand, a knot of unease twisted in his stomach. He looked over at Alex, who was standing at the edge of the crowd, an inscrutable expression on his face. The joy of the moment felt hollow, overshadowed by their strained relationship. "Dad, can we talk?" Alex's voice cut through the chatter, low and urgent. Evan felt a rush of apprehension as he nodded, motioning for Alex to follow him to a quieter corner of the room. "Congratulations, by the way," Evan began, trying to inject some warmth into the conversation. "You've really earned this." Alex's face remained impassive. "Thanks, but that's not why I wanted to talk." He shifted his weight, glancing around as if searching for a safe haven. "It's about everything." Evan hesitated, the air between them thick with unspoken words. "What do you mean by everything?" "Don't play dumb, Dad. You know what I'm talking about." Alex's eyes flashed with a mix of anger and hurt. "You left Mom for Lila. You divorced her without thinking about how it would affect me. And now, I find out that Claire is the mother of my new boss. How do you think that makes me feel?" The mention of Claire sent a jolt through Evan. The past, which he had so carefully compartmentalized, was crashing back into his present. "Alex, did you ever stop to think about how your decisions impacted me?" Alex pressed, his voice rising slightly. "I've spent my entire life trying to prove myself, and now I find out that my success is tied to the woman you left behind. It feels like a betrayal." "I never meant to hurt you," Evan said, desperation creeping into his tone. "I thought I was making the right choice for all of us." "Right choice," Alex scoffed, crossing his arms defensively. "You made a choice that was good for you, not for Mom or me. You abandoned us, Dad." Evan felt a rush of frustration mixed with guilt. "I left because I thought it was what I needed to do. I thought I was giving you a better life, a better life." Alex interrupted. "I don't even know how to relate to you anymore. All I see is the man who chose a different path, who chose ambition over family." Evan's heart sank, the words stinging like a slap. He had spent years building a life of prestige and success, but now those achievements felt like hollow victories. He searched for the right words, but the weight of his son's disappointment seemed insurmountable. "I want to make things right, Alex. I really do. Can you?" Alex's voice softened slightly, revealing a glimpse of the hurt beneath the anger. "Can you really fix this? Or is it too late?" Evan's mind raced, but before he could respond, memories of Claire flooded back, vivid and sharp. He recalled the nights they spent talking about their dreams, the plans they made for their future, the love that had once bound them together. He had lost sight of that, buried under years of ambition and the allure of success. "I don't know if I can fix everything," Evan finally said, his voice heavy with sincerity. "But I want to try. I want to be a part of your life, Alex. I want to understand you." Alex studied his father's face, the tension in the air thickening with uncertainty. "You really think you can just step back into my life after all these years? Just because you want to?" "I know it sounds that way," Evan admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I want to understand what you've been through. I want to be there for you, even if it's late." Alex sighed, the anger slowly dissipating, but still simmering beneath the surface. "You don't understand what it's like to grow up without a father, to feel abandoned. It's not something you can just fix with a few words." Evan nodded, the weight of his son's pain pressing heavily on his chest. "I can't change the past, but I can try to be better. For you. For us." As they spoke, Evan caught a glimpse of Claire across the room, her gaze fixed on them from a distance. She appeared composed, but he could see the way her shoulders tensed, the flicker of concern in her eyes. It was as if she was gauging the outcome of their conversation, hoping for a resolution yet fearful of the past that still haunted them all. "Why didn't you ever tell me about Claire?" Alex asked, breaking Evan's train of thought. "All these years, I had no idea she was my boss's mother. You kept so much from me." Evan felt the familiar rush of guilt wash over him. "I thought I was protecting you. I thought you didn't need to carry that burden." "Protecting me?" Alex's voice rose again, a blend of disbelief and hurt. "You were protecting yourself. You didn't want to deal with the consequences of your actions. You didn't want to face Mom or the choices you made. Evan ran a hand through his hair, frustration boiling over. You think it was easy for me? I lost everything too, Alex. I lost Claire. I lost the family we could have had. Maybe you should have thought about that before making your choices, Alex said, the bitterness in his voice evident. You can't just waltz back into my life and expect everything to be fine. Evan felt the sting of truth in his son's words. I know, he said, his voice low, but I want to try. I want to be honest with you. Honesty? Alex echoed, his skepticism clear. What does that even mean now? Is it just another empty promise? I don't want it to be, Evan replied, his heart racing. I want to build something with you, but I need you to meet me halfway. I need you to let me in. Alex looked away, conflicted emotions playing across his face. I don't know if I can trust you again, Dad. You shattered that trust long ago. I understand, Evan said, his voice steady. But I'm here now, ready to own my mistakes. I want to listen to you, to understand your feelings. I want to be part of your life, no matter how difficult it may be. Just then, Evan noticed Claire moving through the crowd, her eyes locked on him and Alex. There was a softness in her expression, but also an underlying tension. She had been watching them, and Evan could feel the weight of her presence, a reminder of the life he had once known. Maybe we should talk to Mom, Alex suggested tentatively, glancing at Evan. She deserves to know how we're feeling, how we both feel about what happened. Evan swallowed hard, the thought of facing Claire again filling him with a mix of dread and hope. You think that would help? I don't know, Alex admitted, uncertainty lingering in his voice. But I think she deserves honesty from both of us. She's been through a lot too. As Claire approached, Evan felt a rush of emotions. He wanted to reach out, to make amends, but the fear of rejection held him back. He exchanged a glance with Alex, who seemed to share the same apprehension. Hey, Claire said, her voice steady but warm, as she joined them. I couldn't help but overhear some of your conversation. Evan felt exposed, vulnerable under her gaze. We were just talking about the past, he said, struggling to find the right words. Claire nodded, her expression unreadable. It's a difficult topic for all of us. Mom, I think we need to talk about what happened, Alex said, his voice steady. About Dad and the choices he made, about how it affected both of us. Claire looked at Evan, and he could see the hurt in her eyes, a reminder of the pain he had caused. I'm willing to listen, she said softly, her voice laced with emotion. But I need honesty from both of you. Evan felt the weight of the moment, the opportunity to start rebuilding what had been lost. Claire, I've made mistakes. I know that now. I never wanted to hurt you or Alex, but I did. I can't change the past, but I want to be better moving forward. I want to try to make things right. Claire's expression softened slightly, but the hurt still lingered. It's not going to be easy, Evan. Trust is hard to rebuild. I understand, Evan said, his heart racing, but I'm willing to put in the effort if you both are. Alex glanced between his parents, the tension in the air palpable. I think we all need to be honest about how we feel. It's the only way we'll ever move forward. Claire nodded slowly, her gaze steady as she looked at Evan. Then let's start with that. Let's be honest with each other and see where it takes us. As they stood together, the weight of their shared history hung heavy in the air, but for the first time in years, there was a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could begin to heal the wounds the cafe was bustling with the energy of Manhattan's midday rush. Evan Hargrave sat at a corner table, stirring his coffee absently, his mind racing with the events of the past few weeks. He had just watched his son, Alex, receive a promotion that Evan himself had not anticipated. The weight of his choices settled heavily on his shoulders, and he could feel the tension in the air as he awaited Alex's arrival. This meeting was meant to be a chance to reconnect, but the thought of facing the consequences of his past decisions gnawed at him. When Alex finally walked in, Evan noticed a slight hesitation in his son's step. Clad in a well-fitted suit that hinted at his newfound position, Alex exuded a confidence that Evan had not seen before. But as he approached the table, Evan could sense the underlying tension in his son's demeanor. They exchanged a brief nod, and Evan motioned for him to sit down. "Hey, Alex," Evan began, trying to keep his tone light despite the heaviness of the moment. "Congratulations on the promotion. I heard you did an excellent job on that last project." Alex slid into the chair opposite his father, crossing his arms defensively. "Thanks, Dad. It's been a lot of work," he replied, his voice devoid of the enthusiasm Evan had hoped for. Evan took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "I know things have been complicated between us. I'd really like to talk about what happened. I miss you, son." Alex's expression hardened as he leaned back in his chair. "You miss me? You mean like you miss me when you decided to leave Mom and start a new life with Lila?" His words were sharp, each one landing with the weight of unresolved resentment. Evan winced at the accusation. "Alex, save it," Alex interrupted, his voice rising slightly. "You made your choices, Dad. You can't just act like everything is okay now because you think you want to reconnect. It doesn't work like that." Evan felt the sting of his son's words, but he pressed on. "I understand that I hurt you. I didn't handle things well, and I regret how it all went down. But I want to be there for you now. I want to understand how you're feeling." Alex's eyes narrowed, skepticism etched across his face. "How can you understand? You weren't there for me when I needed you the most. You were too busy climbing the corporate ladder with Lila. Don't act like you can just step back into my life and everything will be fine." The cafe hummed around them, but Evan felt as if they were in a bubble, isolated from the world outside. "I know I've made mistakes. I thought I was doing what was best for us, For us?" Alex scoffed, shaking his head. "You mean for you. You left Mom, and that destroyed everything. I had to grow up without you around, and you think a couple coffee dates can fix that?" Evan's heart ached at the raw pain in Alex's voice. "I get it. I can't change the past, but I'd like to try to make things better. You're my son, and I want to be part of your life again." Alex leaned forward, his expression softening slightly. "You really think it's that easy? Just because you're feeling guilty doesn't mean I'm ready to forgive you. I've spent years trying to figure out who I am without you. Please," Evan urged, his voice cracking with emotion. "I'm not asking for forgiveness right now. I just want to understand you. I want to know what you've been through." There was a moment of silence as Alex's guard seemed to waver. He stared at the table, tracing the rim of his coffee cup with his finger. "It's not like I haven't thought about you," he finally admitted, his tone softening. "I had to deal with a lot of anger growing up. I used to wonder why you left, why you chose Lila over us." Evan felt the weight of his son's words settle over him like a heavy cloak. "I never wanted to hurt you or your mother. It was a complicated situation. I thought I could find success and that it would somehow make everything better for us." "Success?" Alex echoed, his brow furrowed. "What does that even mean? You have money and a big job, but at what cost? Look where it got us." Evan ran a hand through his hair, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "I know it sounds shallow, but I thought that if I could provide for you, it would make up for my absence. I was wrong. I see that now." For a moment, the anger in Alex's eyes flickered, replaced by a glimmer of understanding. "You have no idea how much I wanted you to be there for my graduation, or when I got my first job. You weren't just absent. You made a choice to be absent." "I know," Evan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I wish I could take it all back. I wish I could have been there for you. I was selfish, and I see that now. But I'm here now, and I want to try to fix this. Please let me try." Alex's gaze shifted to the window, where the city moved in a blur of yellow cabs and bustling pedestrians. "It's not that simple, Dad. I'm not sure if I can trust you again. You've changed, but I've changed too. I'm not the same kid who waited for you to come home." Evan leaned forward, desperation creeping into his voice. I want to earn back your trust, Alex. I didn't realize how much I had lost until I saw you at the promotion ceremony. You're an incredible young man. I'm proud of you. Proud? Alex scoffed again, but there was less venom in his tone. You didn't even know what I was doing until you saw me. In that position, I had to do it all by myself. I should have been there, Evan replied, his heart racing. I should have been part of your life. But I'm here now, and I want to be part of your future. Alex remained silent for a moment, deep in thought. The tension in the air felt palpable, and Evan could see the internal struggle etched on his son's face. I don't know if we can just jump back into things, Alex finally said, his voice quieter. It's going to take time. I understand that, Evan said, relief flooding through him. I'm willing to be patient. I just want the chance to show you that I can be a better father. As they sat in the cafe, the world around them continued to move, but in that moment, it felt as if time had stopped. Evan watched Alex, searching for signs of hope in his son's expression. You're not the only one who has to change, Alex said, his voice steady. I built walls, and it's not going to be easy to tear them down. But I'm willing to try if you are. Absolutely, Evan promised, feeling a flicker of hope ignite in his chest. I'll do whatever it takes. Just then, Claire walked past the cafe, catching a glimpse of her ex-husband and son through the window. She paused, her heart heavy with emotions she hadn't fully processed. Seeing them together sparked a whirlwind of memories and feelings, and she couldn't help but wonder if they would ever truly find their way back to each other. Inside the cafe, Evan and Alex shared a moment of understanding, a fragile bridge forming between them. As they spoke, the past lingered in the air, but for the first time in years, there was a glimmer of possibility, a chance for healing, redemption, and perhaps a new beginning. Evan stood outside the school, his heart pounding in his chest. It had been years since he had set foot in this building, the place where Claire had poured so much of her heart and soul into her teaching. The memories rushed back: laughter, arguments, the joy of watching their son grow, and the painful moments of their separation. He took a deep breath, reminding himself of why he was here. He needed to reconnect with Claire, to understand how they had both ended up in this tangled web of regret and lost opportunities. As he stepped inside, the familiar scent of chalk and paper enveloped him. The hallways were bustling with students, their laughter echoing off the walls. Evan felt a pang of nostalgia, but it was quickly overshadowed by anxiety. He glanced at the classroom doors, each one marked with a nameplate embossed with the teacher's name. He found Claire's classroom, room 204, and hesitated for a moment before knocking softly. Come in. Claire's voice rang out, warm yet authoritative. Evan pushed the door open, and his breath caught in his throat. She stood at the front of the room, a stack of papers in her hand, her long hair pulled back in a loose bun. The years had been kind to her, but the lines of experience etched on her face told a different story, one of resilience, hard work, and perhaps lingering pain. Evan, she said, surprised but not unwelcoming. What are you doing here? I wanted to talk to you, he stammered, suddenly feeling out of place among the vibrant classroom filled with young minds. Is now a good time? Claire glanced at the clock on the wall. I have a few minutes before the next class starts. What's on your mind? Evan stepped inside, closing the door behind him. I've been thinking a lot about the past, about us, about Alex, and I thought it might be good to talk. Claire's expression shifted slightly, a mixture of curiosity and caution. Talk about what exactly? About how things ended between us, how I've regretted my choices. I thought I could find some answers here, he said, his voice steadying as he gathered his thoughts. I've seen Alex grow, and I realize how much I've missed. I don't want to miss any more time with him, or with you, if that's possible. Claire studied him, her blue eyes piercing through the facade he had built over the years. Evan, you made your choices. You left us. You chose ambition over family. I know, he said, his voice dropping. And I've carried that guilt with me every day since. I thought I was doing the right thing for my career, but in the end, I lost everything that really mattered. Claire sighed, her shoulders relaxing slightly. It's not that simple. You can't just waltz back into my life and expect everything to be okay. I've built a life for myself and for Alex. It's not easy to just forget the past. I don't want to forget, Evan insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. I want to make amends. I want to understand what happened, why I made those choices. You were always the heart of our family, Claire. Heart or not, Evan, you broke it, she said, her voice firm yet tinged with sadness. You traded love for ambition, and that's something you have to live with. Evan's heart sank at her words, but he pressed on. I've come to realize that success isn't just about money or power. It's about relationships, the people we love, and the time we spend with them. I've been a fool to think otherwise. Claire's expression softened, but the walls she had built around her heart remained intact. And what do you expect from me? A forgiveness that comes easily? A reconciliation that erases the years of hurt? No, not easily. I know it will take time. I just want a chance to show you that I've changed, that I'm willing to do the work to rebuild what we lost, Evan pleaded, searching her eyes for any sign of hope. Claire looked away, her gaze drifting to the window where the sun cast warm, golden light into the room. It's not just about us, Evan. Alex is involved, and he has his own feelings about what happened. You can't just come back and expect everything to be perfect. I understand that, he replied, his heart heavy with the weight of the truth. I'd like to talk to him too, to be honest about everything. I just need to take this one step at a time. Talking is one thing, but rebuilding trust is another, Claire said, her voice steady. You'll have to earn that. It won't come from just words. Evan nodded, appreciating her honesty. I want to earn it. I want to show both of you that I can be a better person, a better father. Just then the bell rang, signaling the end of the period. Claire turned to her students, who were already gathering their belongings. All right, everyone, remember your assignments for tomorrow. I expect to see your best work, she called out, her teacher voice resonating with authority. As the students filed out, Evan felt a sense of urgency building inside him. He wanted to grab this moment, to push for more, but he knew he had to tread carefully. Claire, Evan, she interrupted, her tone softening again. I appreciate you coming here, but I need time to think about what you've said. This isn't just about you and me. It's about Alex, and he needs to process everything too. Of course, Evan replied, feeling a mix of relief and disappointment. I'll respect that, but I hope we can talk again soon. Claire nodded, her expression thoughtful. You can come by for the parent-teacher meeting next week. It'll be a good opportunity for you to see how Alex is doing, and maybe we can discuss things further. Evan's heart lifted at the suggestion. I'd like that. Thank you, Claire. As he turned to leave, he paused at the door, looking back at her. I still believe we can find a way to heal. I want that more than anything. Claire offered a small smile, but it was bittersweet. Just remember, healing takes time, Evan. It won't happen overnight. I understand, he said, stepping out into the hallway filled with laughter and life. With each step away from her classroom, he felt a mixture of hope and apprehension. He had taken a step toward reconciliation, but the road ahead was still uncertain. He needed to face Alex, to confront the pain he had caused, and to earn back the trust he had lost. As Evan walked away, Claire remained in her classroom, staring out the window as the sun began to set. She felt the weight of his words linger in the air, a reminder of the love they once shared and the complicated path that lay ahead. She wanted to believe in the possibility of forgiveness, but the scars of the past were deep, and only time would tell if they could truly heal. Evan sat at his sleek, glass desk, the New York skyline sprawling behind him, but the view did little to lift the heaviness in his heart. He stared at the glowing screen of his laptop, but the numbers and graphs blurred as thoughts of Claire and Alex twisted in his mind. He couldn't shake the image of his son's cold expression during the last meeting they had. Evan knew his choices had led them here, this chasm between father and son that felt insurmountable. Frustrated, he rubbed his temples. The weight of his past decisions bore down on him, and the specter of Claire loomed larger each day. He had built a successful life with Lila, but it was becoming increasingly clear to him that the foundation of that life was built on shaky ground. Lila's ambition and relentless drive seemed more like a threat than an asset now. He had chosen her for her energy and allure, but as he reflected on their relationship, he began to wonder if he had been blinded by superficial qualities. The phone on his desk buzzed, startling him from his reverie. It was a message from Alex. "Can we talk? I found something out." A chill ran down Evan's spine. What had Alex discovered? He felt a mix of dread and anticipation, all too aware that whatever it was, it wouldn't be good. Later that evening, Evan paced his apartment, the hardwood floors creaking beneath his feet. His mind raced as he replayed every moment he had with Alex in the past few weeks. The strange silences, the biting comments, the way Alex's blue eyes, so much like Claire's, had turned cold and distant. Evans got twisted at the thought of his son harboring resentment towards him. He glanced at the clock. It was nearly time for their meeting at the coffee shop. Evan felt the familiar knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. He needed to face whatever Alex had to say, but a part of him feared the confrontation that awaited them. As he stepped into the bustling cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloped him, but it felt more suffocating than inviting. Evan scanned the room until his eyes landed on Alex, sitting at a corner table, his jaw clenched and his posture tense. The sight of his son, now a young man, filled Evan with a mix of pride and sorrow. "Hey, Alex," Evan said, forcing a smile as he approached the table. "Dad," Alex replied, his tone flat. He didn't stand up or offer a handshake. Instead, he merely gestured for Evan to sit. Evan took a seat, the air thick with unspoken words. "I got your message. What did you want to talk about?" Alex took a deep breath, his eyes narrowing. "You know Claire's my mother, right?" Evan's heart raced, panic coursing through him. "Of course I know that. Why are you bringing this up?" "Because I just found out that she's my boss." "I mean, how could you not tell me?" Alex's voice rose slightly, a mix of disbelief and anger. "You've been keeping this from me, Dad." Evan felt the heat rise to his cheeks. "I didn't think it mattered. I thought you were focused on your career." "Focus on my career?" Alex laughed bitterly. "You think I care about that? You think I care about anything you think matters? You left us, Dad. You left Claire. And now you're telling me that she's somehow connected to my work, and you didn't say a word." Evan could feel the weight of Alex's words, each one striking him like a blow. "It wasn't my intention to hurt you, Alex. I just asked. You just what? Followed your ambition? Chased after your dreams while we were left to pick up the pieces, Alex's things, to bridge the gap between them. But it was clear that the road to reconciliation would be long and fraught with challenges. As he left the cafe, the city lights flickering around him, Evan felt a mixture of resolve and despair. He had to confront Claire, to face the consequences of his past, and perhaps, just perhaps, find a path that could lead him back to his son. But for now, all he could do was hope that the seeds of honesty they had sown would take root, and that one day they could forge a new beginning together. Evan stood outside Claire's school, the familiar yet alien surroundings stirring memories long buried beneath the weight of his ambitions. It had been 25 years since he walked away from the life they had built together, yet the echoes of laughter from the children playing on the playground felt like a haunting reminder of what he had sacrificed. The sun cast long shadows on the pavement as he took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation he knew was inevitable. He pushed open the gate and walked toward the entrance, his heart pounding in his chest. The vibrant colors of the school's mural depicting children learning and growing seemed to mock him with their innocence. Each step felt heavier than the last, but the thought of reconciling with Claire propelled him forward. He had spent years convincing himself that leaving her was the right choice, but now, in the quiet of this moment, he was beginning to see the cracks in that narrative. Inside, the hallways buzzed with the animated chatter of students. Evan approached the door to Claire's classroom, pausing to gather his thoughts. He could hear her voice through the thin walls, encouraging her students, filling the space with warmth and passion. It was a sound he had once cherished, now tainted by regret. He knocked lightly, and the door swung open, revealing Claire, her expression shifting from surprise to guardedness as she recognized him. "Evan," she said, her voice steady but cool. "What are you doing here?" I wanted to talk," he replied, his voice catching in his throat. "Can we step outside?" Claire hesitated, her eyes searching his face for any sign of insincerity. After a moment, she sighed and nodded, stepping aside to let him in. He followed her into the classroom, filled with colorful drawings and projects, remnants of the children she loved so dearly. "You look good, Claire," Evan said, trying to break the ice, but the words felt clumsy, inadequate. "Thank you," she replied, crossing her arms tightly across her chest, as if protecting herself from him. "What makes you think I want to talk to you after all this time?" "I know I've made mistakes," Evan began, his voice earnest. "I've spent years regretting how things ended between us. I didn't come here to justify my choices. I came to apologize." Claire raised an eyebrow, skepticism etched on her face. "Apologize? After 25 years? What do you think that will change?" "The past can't be changed, I know that," he said, his hands gesturing with frustration. "But I need you to know that leaving you was the hardest decision I ever made. I thought I was doing what was best for my career, but I was wrong. I was so focused on success that I lost sight of what truly mattered." She shook her head, a bitter smile crossing her lips. "You always had your priorities straight, Evan. You chased after money and status, while I was left to pick up the pieces. What do you want from me now? To absolve you of your guilt?" "No," he replied quickly, desperation lacing his tone. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to understand. I want to know how you feel about everything." Claire's expression softened for just a moment, the walls she had built around her heart flickering with doubt. "You think you can just waltz back into my life and demand answers? You don't get to rewrite history, Evan." "I'm not trying to rewrite anything," he insisted, his voice firm yet gentle. "I just want to hear your side. I want to know how you've been, how Alex has been. I've missed so much, and I regret not being there for both of you." Claire sighed, the weight of his words hanging in the air like a thick fog. "You missed our son growing up, Evan. You missed his first steps, his first words. You weren't there for his graduation. What do you want me to say thank you for asking?" "I'm not asking for gratitude, Claire," he said, taking a step closer, lowering his voice. "I'm here because I want to be part of your lives again. I want to understand the man Alex has become, and I want to start making amends." She studied him, her eyes piercing through his facade, searching for sincerity. "You think this is easy for me? That I've just been waiting for you to realize your mistakes? I built my life without you, Evan. I had to, and it hurt. It still hurts." Evan felt the sting of her words, as if she were striking a chord he had long tried to silence. "I know it hurt you. I see it now. I was selfish. I thought I could have it all: success, power, without realizing the cost. But I was wrong. I was a fool." "You were a fool, yes," Claire replied, her voice steady but tinged with sadness. "But you were also a father who walked away. You don't just get to come back and play the role of the caring dad after neglecting it for so long." "I don't expect it to be easy," he admitted, his voice breaking slightly. "I just want a chance to try. For Alex's sake, if not for ours." Claire's expression softened again, but the resolve in her eyes remained. "You think Alex will want to hear your excuses? He's dealt with your absence for so long. Do you really think he's ready to let you back in?" "He deserves the truth," Evan said, his heart racing. "If I can't have a relationship with him, I want him to know why I wasn't there. I want to show him that I'm trying to change." Claire regarded him carefully, weighing his words against the pain of their shared past. "You want to make amends, Evan? Then start by being honest with him. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't hide behind your success. Show him the man you've become, not the man you were." "I will," he promised, sincerity flooding his voice. "I'll be honest with him. I swear it." Just then, a group of children burst into the classroom, their laughter filling the air and breaking the tension that had hung between them. Claire's face shifted back to her teacher persona in an instant, her eyes lighting up as she greeted her students. "Ms. Hargrave, we finished our project," one little girl exclaimed, holding up a colorful poster. Evan watched as Claire transformed, her demeanor softening as she engaged with the children. It was a side of her he had missed, this nurturing, passionate woman who dedicated her life to shaping young minds. In that moment, he felt a pang of longing for the life they could have had together. As the children buzzed around her, Claire glanced back at Evan, her expression unreadable. "If you want to reconnect with Alex, you can't just come in and out of his life. You need to be present, Evan. You need to show him you care." "I will," he said fervently, determination flooding his veins. "I'll make sure he knows I'm here for him, no matter what." She nodded slowly, still cautious, but perhaps a little more open than before. "Then you need to start today. He's having a rough time with the promotion, and he needs support. If you're serious about this, you'll need to be there when it counts." Evan swallowed hard, realizing the weight of her words. He had a chance to mend his relationship with Alex, but it wouldn't be easy. "I'll be there. I promise." As the children began to gather their things, Claire turned back to him, her expression shifting once more to a mixture of sadness and resolve. "Just remember, Evan, it won't happen overnight. Trust takes time to rebuild." "I understand," he replied, feeling the gravity of her statement. "But I'm willing to wait for both of you." With that, Claire smiled faintly, the warmth of her spirit shining through the cracks of their past. "Good. Then let's see if you can keep that promise." Evan stepped out of the classroom, the weight of his past still heavy on his shoulders, but now accompanied by a flicker of hope. As he walked away, he felt the burden of guilt starting to lift, replaced by the possibility of redemption. He would face the challenges ahead, not just for himself, but for Alex and for the family he once had. Evan stood alone in his penthouse office, overlooking the skyline of Manhattan. The city was alive beneath him, a chaotic mixture of ambition and dreams, but within him brewed a storm of confusion and regret. He had spent the last 25 years climbing the corporate ladder, his heart once filled with the love of a woman he had discarded. Now, as he stared out at the twinkling lights, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had sacrificed something far more valuable than corporate success's family. "Evan," Lila called from the doorway, her voice slicing through his thoughts. She stepped inside, her heels clicking against the polished floor, a stark contrast to the disarray in his mind. "Are you ready for the meeting? The board is expecting you." He turned, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Yeah, I'll be there in a minute." "Is everything okay?" she asked, her brow furrowing with concern. "You seem off." "Just thinking," he replied, brushing off her concern. "Nothing to worry about." But Lila, always perceptive, stepped closer, her expression softening. "You know you can talk to me, right? We make a great team." In that moment, Evan wanted to believe her. He wanted to confide in her about the turmoil in his heart, the regret over Claire, the bond he had lost with Alex. Yet, something held him back. Instead of sharing his burdens, he forced himself to nod. "Let's focus on the meeting." As they walked to the conference room, Evan felt the weight of Lila's presence beside him. She was beautiful, ambitious, and everything he thought he wanted. Yet, in the pit of his stomach, he felt an emptiness that he couldn't ignore. The closer they got to the meeting, the more he realized that Lila was not the woman he had once dreamed of spending his life with. The realization sent a shiver down his spine. Later that evening, After the meeting had concluded and the board members had filed out, Evan found himself sitting across from Lila at a high-end restaurant. The ambience was elegant, the soft glow of candlelight casting shadows on their faces, but the atmosphere felt strained. "Evan, I think we need to discuss where this is all heading," Lila began, her voice steady but her eyes searching. "I want us to be a power couple, but I need to know that you're fully committed to us." Evan took a sip of his wine, the rich flavor mingling with his swirling thoughts. "I am committed, Lila. It's just, things have been complicated lately." "Complicated how?" she pressed, leaning forward. "Is it about your son? I know you've been trying to reach out to him, but he seems so distant. Maybe we should focus on our future instead." "Alex is my son, Lila. He's part of my life whether I like it or not," Evan said, his voice rising slightly in frustration. "You don't understand what it's like to have made choices that hurt the people you love." Lila's expression hardened, her ambition flashing through her eyes. "I understand more than you think. I've sacrificed a lot for this company and for us, but I refuse to be a placeholder in your life while you sort out your past." Evan felt a pang of guilt. "I didn't mean it like that. You're not a placeholder." "Then prove it," she shot back, her temper flaring. "Show me that you want this as much as I do. I need to know that you're not still hung up on Claire." The mention of Claire sent a wave of memories crashing over him, memories he had tried to bury. He remembered Claire's laughter, the warmth of her embrace, and the way she used to look at him with unconditional love. He shook his head, trying to dispel the images. "It's not about Claire," he insisted, but the lie fell hollow. "Then why do I feel like I'm competing with a ghost?" Lila's voice softened, her vulnerability breaking through her bravado. "Evan, I want to be with you, but you need to let go of the past." Evan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know. I wish things had been different. I thought I wanted this life, but sometimes I wonder if it was worth it." They sat in silence, tension thick in the air. Evan's thoughts drifted to Alex, the way their relationship had soured over the years. He had tried to reach out, but every attempt felt like it was met with coldness and resentment. The wall between them seemed insurmountable, and he felt as if he was losing his son for good. "Evan, are you listening?" Lila's voice broke through his reverie. "Sorry, I was just thinking about Alex," he admitted, his heart heavy. "I don't know how to fix things between us." "Maybe you need to start being honest with him," Lila suggested. "You can't keep avoiding the truth. He deserves to know how you feel." Evan looked at her, the flickering candlelight reflecting in her eyes. "You're right. I need to talk to him, but it's complicated. I've hurt him, and I don't know if he'll ever forgive me." "Then you need to try," she urged, her tone earnest. "For both your sakes. You can't move forward if you're still anchored in the past." Later that night, as he lay in bed beside Lila, Evan's mind was racing. He could feel her warmth beside him, but it did nothing to soothe the turmoil within. He had spent years chasing success, but what had it brought him? A beautiful woman who was ambitious but lacked the depth he craved. A son who felt like a stranger, and a past that haunted him. In the quiet of the night, he found himself reaching for his phone, contemplating whether to send a message to Alex. But as he stared at the blank screen, doubt crept in. What should he say? How could he begin to bridge the chasm he had created? He tossed the phone aside, frustration boiling within him. The next day, Evan found himself wandering through the streets of Manhattan, aimlessly lost in thought. He passed by a park where parents played with their children, laughter ringing out in the air. A pang of longing struck him. He wished he could turn back time. He remembered the joy of being a father, the pride he felt watching Alex take his first steps, the way Claire's eyes sparkled with happiness. With each step, the weight of his decisions pressed down harder on him. He couldn't keep running away from his past. He had to confront it. He needed to speak to Claire, to understand how she felt about everything that had happened. Perhaps it would help him make sense of his own feelings, and maybe, just maybe, it would help him reconnect with Alex. Determined, He set off toward the school where Claire taught. As he arrived, he felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. What would he say? Would she even want to see him? He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation ahead. Inside the school, he spotted Claire in the hallway, surrounded by students. She was animatedly discussing a project, her passion for teaching apparent. Evan's heart raced as he approached her, a whirlwind of emotions coursing through him. She looked up, her expression shifting from surprise to guardedness. "Evan," she said, her voice steady. "What are you doing here?" "I came to talk," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "About us. About Alex." Claire's eyes narrowed slightly, her defenses rising. "What's there to talk about? You made your choice a long time ago." "I know," he admitted, shame flooding through him. "But I've been thinking about everything. About how I treated you, about how I've been with Alex. I want to make things right." She crossed, her arms, her expression unreadable. "And you think you can just waltz back into our lives and fix everything? It's not that simple, Evan." "I don't expect it to be simple," he replied, desperation creeping into his voice. "I just want a chance to explain myself, to apologize for everything." Claire's gaze softened momentarily, and he saw a flicker of the woman he had once loved. "What do you want from me, Evan?" "I want to understand," he said, his voice cracking. "I want to understand your pain, how you felt when I left, and how I can be a better father to Alex." Claire studied him for a long moment, and Evan could see the internal struggle on her face. Finally, she sighed, the walls around her heart beginning to lower. "It's not just about you, Evan. I've spent years trying to raise Alex without you. He's hurt, and I've hurt too. I don't know if I can let you back in." "Please," he pleaded, his heart racing. "I need to talk to you and to Alex. I need to show him that I'm trying to change." Claire hesitated, the weight of their shared history hanging heavy between them. She took a deep breath, and Evan could see the conflicting emotions in her eyes. "I'll think about it," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But know this, Evan, it's going to take time. I can't just forget what happened." As he left the school, Evan felt a flicker of hope igniting within him. Perhaps this was a first step toward healing the wounds he had inflicted, not just on Claire, but the atmosphere in the grand hall of the corporate event was electric, filled with the buzz of high-profile executives discussing deals and futures. Evan Hargrave, the man of the hour, stood at the center of it all, his polished demeanor masking the turmoil churning within him. He adjusted his tie, his mind racing as he prepared for the evening's keynote address. Yet, the thought of facing Lila after their earlier argument weighed heavily on him. As he took the stage, the applause washed over him, but it felt hollow. He glanced toward the back of the room, searching for Alex, who had promised to attend but had yet to show. The absence of his son gnawed at Evan, a reminder of the distance that had grown between them over the years. He cleared his throat, forcing himself to focus on the crowd. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Evan began, his voice steady, though his heart raced. "As we continue to expand our horizons, I want to take a moment to reflect on the journey that brought us here." His speech was filled with the usual corporate jargon about success and innovation, but all he could think about was the confrontation looming ahead with Lila. After the speech, he stepped down, hoping to find solace in the familiar faces of his colleagues. Instead, he spotted Lila across the room, her laughter mingling with that of a young executive, a man who Evan recognized but couldn't place. A pang of jealousy twisted in his gut as he watched her lean in closer, her hand lightly grazing the man's arm. "Evan, great speech," a voice called, pulling him from his thoughts. It was Greg, his right-hand man, who clapped him on the shoulder. "Thanks, Greg," Evan replied, forcing a smile. "I think we're making real progress." "Absolutely, but you've got to talk to Lila. She's been waiting for you." Greg gestured toward Lila, who was now scanning the room, her eyes landing on Evan. Her expression shifted from jovial to unreadable as their gazes met. Taking a deep breath, Evan walked toward her, each step heavy with the weight of unspoken words. He reached her just as she turned away from the other executive, her demeanor shifting to one of irritation. "What do you want, Evan?" Lila asked, her voice clipped, cutting through the festive atmosphere. "I think we need to talk," he said, trying to maintain a calm exterior. "About earlier." "Really? You want to talk about it now?" Lila crossed her arms, her posture defensive. "In front of everyone? Isn't that the point?" Evan pressed, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard. "We can't keep pretending everything is fine." Her eyes narrowed, and Evan could see the fire behind her cool facade. "Fine? You want to talk about fine? You think I'm just going to stand here and let you question my loyalty? I've been nothing but dedicated to this company and to you." Evan took a step closer, lowering his voice. "It's not about your dedication, Lila. It's about us, about how we got here." She scoffed, shaking her head. "Us? You mean you and your perfect life? Your son is here tonight, Evan. Don't you care about how he feels?" The mention of Alex struck a nerve. "Of course I care. That's why I'm trying to fix this," he insisted, gesturing between them. "But you can't act like you're the only one who's been wronged in all of this. I made mistakes too." Lila's expression softened slightly, but her resolve remained. "You think I don't know that? You left Claire for me, Evan. You chose ambition over family. And now, look where we are. You're losing your son, and I can't help you fix that." "I'm not asking you to fix it," Evan said, his voice rising. "I just want you to be honest with me, for once. Are you with me in this, or are you just using this as a stepping stone for your own career?" Lila's eyes flared with anger, but there was a flicker of uncertainty, too. "That's not fair," she retorted. "You know how hard I've worked to help you build this company. I sacrificed so much, Dash. Did you ever stop to think about what I sacrificed?" he interrupted, his frustration boiling over. "I lost my family. I lost my son's trust. And for what? A chance at success that feels more like a prison every day." "Then maybe it's time to face the truth," she shot back, her voice low but intense. "You can't keep running from your past. You have to confront it." With that, she turned on her heel, leaving Evan staring after her, the weight of her words settling heavily in his chest. He felt the room closing in around him, the laughter and chatter a stark contrast to the turmoil within. For the first time in years, he felt the urge to confront the ghost he had tried so hard to bury. As the evening wore on, Evan found himself wandering through the hall, lost in thought. The faces of his colleagues blurred together as he replayed the conversation with Lila in his mind. He needed to talk to Alex, to reach out and bridge the gap that had formed between them. But the fear of rejection held him back. Just as he was about to leave, he spotted Alex standing near the entrance, speaking to a group of young professionals. The pride in Evan's chest swelled as he watched his son, but it was quickly replaced by anxiety. What would he say? How could he explain the choices he made all those years ago? Taking a deep breath, Evan approached, trying to appear calm. "Hey, Alex," he said, forcing a smile. Alex looked up, surprise crossing his face. "Dad, I didn't expect to see you here." There was a distance in his tone, a reminder of the unresolved tension between them. "I just finished my speech," Evan replied, gesturing vaguely. "How's everything going with you?" "Fine," Alex replied curtly, glancing back at his friends, who were now watching the interaction with interest. "Just discussing the project for next quarter." Evan hesitated, searching for the right words. "I want to talk to you about something important." "It's about..." "Well, about us." "Us," Alex echoed, his eyebrows raised. "What could we possibly need to discuss? You've been so busy. I didn't think you had time for family matters." Evan felt the sting of his son's words, but he pressed on. "I know I haven't been there for you, and I'm sorry. I want to change that. Can we talk somewhere private?" Alex's expression hardened. "What's there to talk about? You made your choices, Dad. You left us behind for Lila and your career. I'm not sure there's anything left to say." Evan took a step closer, his voice earnest. "Please, just give me a chance to explain. I didn't realize how much I had lost until recently. I want to be part of your life again, to understand what you're going through." "Why now?" Alex challenged, crossing his arms defiantly. "Why do you care all of a sudden? You didn't care before." The accusation hit Evan hard, but he refused to back down. "Because I've been forced to confront my past, Alex. I've seen how my decisions have hurt you, and I regret every moment I wasn't there. I want to make it right." Alex's expression softened for a moment, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through his tough exterior. "You think just saying you're sorry is enough? Do you even know how it felt to grow up without a father?" "I can only imagine," Evan replied, his voice thick with emotion. "But I want to understand. I want to be there for you, to support you in ways I failed to before." The two stood in tense silence, the weight of their shared history hanging between them. Evan could see the conflict in Alex's eyes, the desire to reconnect battling with the pain of abandonment. Just as Evan was about to speak again, the unexpected sound of footsteps approached them. "Evan!" Lila's voice cut through the moment, her presence looming behind him. Evan turned to face her, a mix of frustration and confusion washing over him. "What do you want, Lila?" "I need to talk to you," she said, her tone urgent. "Now!" Alex's eyes darted between them, a flicker of understanding passing over his features. "Great. Just what I needed. A family reunion." "Alex, please," Evan said, desperation creeping into his voice. "This is important." But Alex shook his head, his jaw clenched. "You two have each other. I don't need to be part of whatever this is. I'm done." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Evan feeling hollow and defeated. Lila stepped closer, her expression serious. "Evan, we need to discuss what just happened," she said, her voice low. "You can't ignore the reality of our situation." "I'm not ignoring it," Evan snapped, frustration boiling over. "I'm trying to fix it, but every time I take a step forward, something pulls me back." "Then stop letting your past dictate your future," Lila urged, her eyes piercing his. "You have a choice to make, and it can't wait any longer." Evan felt his heart racing, the weight of her words pressing down on him. "I know I have to confront my past." Evan stood in his upscale Manhattan office, the skyline glittering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He was still reeling from the confrontation with Lila, the ambitious secretary, who had become more of a burden than a partner. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, regrets, hopes, and a flickering desire for redemption. Just as he was about to pick up the phone to call Alex, the unexpected ring of his cell phone interrupted his thoughts. It was Claire. "Evan." Claire's voice came through the line, steady yet tinged with emotion. "Can we talk?" Evan hesitated for a moment, his heart racing at the sound of her voice after all these years. Yes, of course. Is everything okay?" "I think we need to discuss Alex. Can we meet?" Claire's tone was resolute, and Evan could sense the weight of her words. It was as if the past 25 years had led to this moment. "Sure, where?" Evan asked, feeling a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. "How about the park? It's quiet there." "Okay, I'll be there in a few minutes." As he made his way to the park, Evan's mind raced with memories, fragments of laughter, arguments, and the love they once shared. The park was a place they had often visited together, a sanctuary that held echoes of their past. Arriving, he spotted Claire sitting on a bench, her posture straight yet relaxed, her eyes fixed on the lake. It was a familiar sight that tugged at his heartstrings. "Evan," she greeted, her voice softening as he approached. "Claire," he replied, taking a seat beside her. Silence enveloped them, thick with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. "Alex got promoted," she said finally, breaking the silence. "He's doing well, and I think he's ready to understand more about our past." Evan nodded, his throat tightening. "I know." I've been trying to reach out to him, but it's complicated. Claire turned to him, her expression serious. He feels betrayed, Evan. He discovered the truth about me being his boss, and he's struggling with how you never told him. I didn't want to hurt him, Evan replied, his voice barely above a whisper. I thought it would be better if he didn't know. Better for whom? Claire challenged, her eyes piercing through his defenses. You made decisions without considering how they would affect him. Evan felt the sting of her words, the truth behind them undeniable. I know I made mistakes. I thought I was doing what was right for my career, for my future. But I see now. I see how it all unraveled. Claire sighed, her gaze drifting back to the lake. I always knew you had ambitions, Evan, but I also believed in love. We had a life together, and you chose to walk away from that. You chose ambition over family. I thought I was choosing success for us, Evan replied, frustration creeping into his voice. But look where it led us. I lost you, and now I'm losing Alex. Evan, Alex needs honesty, not excuses. He needs to know that he can trust you, Claire said, her tone softening. I encouraged him to pursue this promotion because I wanted him to succeed, not as a means to get back at you, but because I believe in him. The revelation hit Evan like a tidal wave. You knew all along? You weren't trying to undermine me? Claire shook her head, a small smile breaking through her somber expression. No, Evan. I wanted him to rise on his own merit. I wanted him to have opportunities that I couldn't provide. I encouraged him, not out of spite, but out of love. Evan exhaled deeply, the weight of guilt beginning to lift, replaced by a sense of hope. I've been so focused on my career and my failures that I forgot what truly mattered. I need to make things right with Alex. Claire nodded, her expression softening. He's a good kid, Evan. He's just struggling to understand where you fit into his life now. He needs to know that you're still his father, that you care. I do care, Evan insisted, his voice firm. I want to be in his life again. I want him to know that I'm proud of him. Then you need to talk to him. Really talk to him, Claire encouraged. Open up about everything, the mistakes, the regrets, and the love you still have for him. I will, Evan promised, determination flooding his veins. I'll reach out to him today. As they sat in comfortable silence, the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park. Evan looked at Claire, the woman he once loved, and felt a rush of gratitude. Thank you for being here, Claire. I didn't realize how much I needed this conversation. Just remember, Evan, healing takes time. It won't be easy, but if you're willing to be honest, you might just find a way back to him, Claire replied, her voice gentle yet firm. Evan nodded, the weight of her words settling in. I won't let you down. As they stood to leave, Evan felt a newfound sense of purpose. He turned to Claire. I hope one day we can rebuild our friendship too. You've always been important to me. Maybe in time, Claire said with a faint smile, revealing a glimpse of the warmth they once shared. Right now, focus on Alex. Evan watched as Claire walked away, her silhouette slowly disappearing into the distance. He pulled out his phone, his hand shaking slightly as he dialed Alex's number. The line rang, and with each passing second his heart pounded louder. Hey, Dad! Alex's voice came through, cool and distant. Alex. Evan began, his throat dry. Can we talk? There was a pause on the other end. Evan could feel the hesitation. About what? About everything, Evan replied, determination surging within him. About us. About your promotion. I'd like to explain everything if you'll let me. Sure, I guess, Alex said, his tone more guarded than ever. Where do you want to meet? How about the cafe we used to go to? Evan suggested, recalling happier times. Okay, I'll be there in 30 minutes, Alex replied, though his voice lacked enthusiasm. As Evan hung up the phone, he felt a mix of fear and excitement. He was finally taking steps to mend the broken relationship with his son. Every moment spent apart weighed heavily on him, but he was determined to bridge the gap. Arriving at the cafe, Evan took a moment to collect his thoughts. He hadn't been there in years, but the familiar sense of coffee and pastries flooded him with nostalgia. When Alex walked in, Evan's heart sank at the sight of the young man who resembled him so much but felt like a stranger. "Hey," Alex said, sliding into the booth opposite Evan. "Hey," Evan replied, searching for the right words. "I'm glad you came." "Yeah, well, let's get this over with," Alex replied, crossing his arms defensively. Evan took a deep breath, the urgency of the moment pressing down on him. "I want to start by saying I'm sorry for everything, for leaving you and your mom, for not being there for you. I didn't handle things well, and I regret it every day." Alex's expression softened slightly, but the hurt was still palpable. "You made your choices, Dad. You chose work over family." "I know," Evan said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I want you to know that I've always cared about you, even when I wasn't there. I've watched you grow from a distance, and I'm proud of the man you're becoming." "I found out that Mom is my boss, and I felt so lost," Alex admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I thought you kept that from me because you didn't want me to know. I felt betrayed." "I should have told you the truth," Evan said, his eyes pleading. "I thought it would protect you, but I see now that it only drove us further apart. Claire encouraged you because she believes in you, and I should have trusted her judgment." "Why didn't you tell me you still cared?" Alex asked, frustration bubbling to the surface. "It felt like you just walked away, like I was nothing to you." "I never stopped caring, Alex. I got lost in my own ambitions. I was wrong to think that success could replace the family I left behind," Evan said, his heart breaking at the pain in his son's eyes. Alex looked down at his coffee, stirring it absently. "It's hard to believe that, Dad. After everything. I know it's hard, but I want to try to make it right. I want to be part of your life again," Evan said earnestly. "You deserve that, and I want to be the father you need." After a long silence, Alex finally looked up, his eyes searching Evan's. "It's going to take time, you know. I'm not sure I can just forget everything." "I don't expect you to," Evan replied, a sense of relief washing over him. "I just want the chance to earn your trust back, to be a part of your life. I'll do whatever it takes." Alex nodded slowly, the walls around his heart beginning to crumble. "Okay then, let's take it one step at a time." As they sat together in that cozy cafe,